Hello everyone and Happy New Year. Today we're going to be going through all 16 leaders in Halo Wars 2 and give you the last ever Halo Wars 2 leader tier list. I say last ever because as you all probably know, 343 have given up on us. They left us and will no longer be providing any kind of support for the game. In fact, they completely removed Halo Wars 2 as a game from Halo Waypoint, and with the last balance patch being almost 2 years ago, it's very unlikely we will see another. So, I've been playing Halo Wars 2 for 5 years now. I've casted, hosted, and played thousands of high-level champion games, so I would say that puts me in a pretty good position to create a legitimate tier list. But, as with any tier list, it is somewhat a matter of opinion, and many of you may agree, and some of you also disagree. I may even miss some things, so please do drop your opinions and thoughts in the comments below. So guys, here we are, standard tier list maker. We get to jump in and rank all the Halo Wars 2 leaders, and I'm going to be explaining why I think they're in the position they're in, what's good about the leader, what's also bad about the leader, and how they're falling with the meta. Obviously, Halo Wars 2, 16 leaders to balance. That's a very tough ask for any sort of dev. And 343 just went up to that standard. To be honest, they had one guy balancing it who didn't really have a clue. They took a lot of community feedback, but didn't really implement it. So unfortunately, we are now left with the game we have, which is why I've titled it, for example, the last Halo Wars 2 leader tier list, technically, because I don't think we'll get another balance patch in the future. Unless something triggers in 343 that changes their mind. But as you all know, they have removed Halo Wars 2 and the whole Halo Wars series from Halo Waypoint, which suggests that they will not be doing anything else for Halo Wars 2. So, we categorize the tiers a bit differently. For example, S needs nerfs. Obviously, everyone in S, I believe, are very, very strong leaders. They need something balancing around them to bring them in line with the other leaders. A is powerful, so they're not as broken as the other leaders, but they are very strong in comparison to the B, C, D tier leaders, who need something extra to bring them in line as well. So B, we have viable. So B, essentially, this is like our balanced line. So these leaders are pretty well-rounded, pretty well-balanced, but it's hard for them to compete against S and A because there's so much broken about them that it's difficult when you pick these leaders. And a lot of things come into play when you're making a tier list. Obviously, everyone has a different opinion, but you've got your leader matchup. Some, like a leader in C could do better against the leader in A than a leader in A does against A. That's just the way the game works. These counter matchups in every RTS game. The maps make a big difference as well, utilizing the leader powers and what each leader has to use on those maps and how the maps are laid out. There's so much stuff that goes into this, but this tier list is made from the top tier, so the very best players in the game, playing these leaders constantly, essentially not making many mistakes, and how the leaders tie up that way. Like if you're in gold, plat, or whatever, you might, let's say, be really good with, I don't know, Serina against the Decimus, which in logical sense, that just should never happen. Decimus should win that matchup all the time. There's a couple of occasions where someone will mess up and things go wrong, but aside from that, that shouldn't happen. So that's what the tier list is going to be based on, the higher level of the tiers. So first leader we're going to be coming up with here is going to be Captain Cutter. Choose Captain Cutter because personally, I love playing as the UNSC. I'm not really a big Banished guy, even though Banished are very strong in this game, very dominant in this game. But I love UNSC, love Cutter. Even my Twitch emotes are based around Cutter life. So, Captain Cutter. How does he fall into the meta? What tier is he going to go into? So, if we talk about the positives of Cutter, so He has UNSC Raid as essentially his first point, and you usually take that as second point as well. So that's going to speed up your infantry. They're going to run a lot faster. They're going to capture power nodes a lot faster. And power nodes are very big in this game for getting ahead. So for all those of you who don't know, a power node gives 1.5 power per second in comparison to a generator. An unupgraded generator gives 3 power per second, and an upgraded one 6 power per second. So if you have 4 power nodes, you essentially have an upgraded generator, and that is massive because standard in the early game you would have 2 generators. So if you have 4 nodes on top of that, you have the third generator. You're saving 800 blue, and you get all that power income. So the reason Captain Cutter is high up and really good is his map control. The speed at which he caps nodes and the speed at which he moves around the map with his infantry. UNSC Raid 1 gives 10% speed boost, and I think 2 is 17%. So it's a big difference for him to get around the map. And that's his whole play style, his harassment. You don't really want to try and fight, especially against a Banished player, because Banished have such strong counter units that you'll just get shredded. So you have to try and find openings. Find those openings, damage the economy, take mini bases out, take power nodes, all going on in the same match, which is very hard if the Banished player is a good player, because he'll just stop you doing that. And if that player gets shut down, then Cutter's just useless. There's nothing you can do. But the other side of his game is taking timings and drops. So he has a lot of unit drops, which also provide stuns. Like you got the third point ODST, you got the Cyclops drop, you got the ODST assault group, so he's got 3 potential drops there that can sway a fight, as you will. You can sway a fight with the stuns, help you win. If you can stun half the army and kill the other half, or kill the stunned half, you're going to have the advantage in that fight no matter what. So that's what makes him so good, his drops. The ability to have 120 pop versus 120 pop, all of a sudden you lose 40, 50, 60 population. And then you drop 60 pop back in, so all of a sudden your opponent's down to 80, has to rebuild, so there's time to rebuild units to get back into the fight and then rally back to the fight, where you're just dropping a whole army in, and you should essentially win that fight. So it's all about timings and things like that, but he does lack some aspects compared to other leaders. Like the Banished just have much better counter units, and that's going to be the common theme going through this tier list of how strong the Banished are versus UNSC. The Reavers, the Hunters, the Rangers are just so strong against the core units and the counter units that UNSC have available. So it's very hard for them to compete. So you will see a lot of Banished leaders, obviously, talking about them at the top of the tier list. But a very good leader all around. Early tier 1, you got the Spartans, pretty good. The Spartan slams are pretty good. Spartan leaders are generally very good for the UNSC heroes. Hijack vehicles, one of the biggest features of them, especially when your opponent's on Wraiths or Vultures, for example. They're very expensive units to be hijacking, and the hijack comes up, every 60 to 90 seconds, somewhere around that mark. So you're stealing a unit that costs like 550 to 800 blue every minute or so, which can sway the fight over time, help you win the game. He's got mines as well, if you wanted to go mines on second point, so that's a very popular option against Banished, because Banished don't really have Detect on Tech 1, so that's a huge part of the matchup. UNSC will regularly build snipers on Tech 1 for Detect. You very rarely see a Banished building engineers on Tech 1, just because infantry is so dominant on Tech 1, and it's Tech 2 where you start transitioning to like your vehicles, essentially. We'll get into some AOP talks later. You won't usually build on Tech 2. Very situational indeed. And probably the only downside of Cutter, so this game, third point is generally where all of the leaders get their nukes, their killer weapon, like your glassing beam, your scatter bomb, during salvo, Mac blast, and stuff like that. Generally, third point is where the game really starts to change. So archer missiles is what Cutter has on third point, essentially. But the popular choice is ODST drop. Archer missiles, it's good, it's decent. It's not really great for killing armies in comparison to other leader powers, which kind of lets him down a little bit. But it is great for killing pads and helping with his harassment playstyle. And the other thing that lets him down as well is his ultimate power. So the close air support costs 1,500 blue. That is a lot of money when 5th point comes in about the 10 to 12 mark if you want to push that in straight away. So you will see regularly cutter players go for the ODST assault group. So you're dropping in essentially, as we mentioned earlier, an army. So you've got your tank, you got your ODSTs, you got your Cyclops, all vetted up as well. Vet units are so strong in this game, probably maybe a bit too strong, to be honest. Your Vet 2s, and Shipmaster used to have Vet 3s as well, which was absolutely insane, but he was nerfed. The veterancy came down by 1 level, I believe. So yeah, the close air support, it's not the best ultimate ability in the game, which lets his late game down. So you'll find Cutter is very strong Tech 1, Tech 2 in the mid game, but then late game he will fall off when the other leaders start getting their abilities in. So the close air support, 1,500 blue. You can't really drop it on an army, because if you drop it on an army in a fight, the army runs away. You just wasted 1,500 blue for nothing. It's so easy to get away from. So you have to drop it on a base during a fight. And the problem with dropping it on a base is due to a mechanic in the game with the targeting of the close air support. They will target turrets, then units, then the buildings. So, or is it? I think it's units, turrets, then the buildings, but people don't usually leave the units there. So what happens is you'll drop a close air support on a base to like strip it with a sneak attack or something like that, and their opponent will just build 4 watchtowers and constantly build watchtowers, not costing them anywhere near as much as you've put in on the close air support. And that close air support has just been a complete waste. You've wasted 1,500 blue, and you're hanging your head like, oh shit, what do I do now? I'm a broke. And the opponent's pushing your base. So that is essentially what the benefits and the negatives of Captain Cutter are. So you will be able to see the full tier list in the Halo Wars 2 guide, but where we're going to be placing Captain Cutter is in the B section. So he's going to be middle of the line. He's a very good leader, very fun to play. Anybody new? He's a fun leader to play just because of all the drops and you get around the map very quickly. But we're going to be dropping him in the B tier for now. We'll see if it changes later on as we get the other leaders in here, but this will all start shaping up further down the video as we get all the leaders in place. So guys, up next, we're going to be talking about Kinsano, because she's very similar to Captain Cutter and the way he plays with the harassment and the unit drops. She just does it better. She has a lot more tools in her arsenal to be able to achieve that harassment on the minis and the pads and stuff like that. But her playstyle can be very predictable. If you find yourself behind in a game, it's very tough to come back because your opponent would be prepared for you. But if we talk about Tech 1 first, we can get into that later on. So Tech 1, with heroes being so dominant in this game, she doesn't really have a great Tech 1 hero. Most players will skip the Kinsano Cyclops hero on Tech 1, get a Tech 2 where she starts to become really good. So her Tech 2 and Tech 3 upgrades make her extremely fast, extremely hard to catch. And at those points in the game, the Banish wouldn't really have a shield gen up, you wouldn't really have fortifications upgrades, so she can whittle away at your supply pads, your generators and your minis, and just become a huge nuisance because your opponent has to commit probably 20 to 30 population just to catch her and kill her. So that harassment and the distraction she can cause there can allow you to make other stuff happen on other sides of the map within the game. But on Tech 1, she does have other options. So she has a very good infantry play and rabbits as well. So she's very well known for her rabbits from a UNSC point of view. She has probably almost the best scouts in the game. I believe Ghost just still outshine hair rabbits with red line. So we're talking about red line rabbits here, not just the standard rabbits. You've got heat of battle and red line for Kinsano generally when you are playing rabbits. Red line giving you an 8% damage buff and a 25% speed buff. So jackrabbits are already very fast, much faster than ghosts and choppers. So when you have the 25% speed on there, your harassment capabilities and your ability to get in and out of fights, as long as your micro is up to point, is very good. So harassment becomes very good there. But you just can't take engagements against infantry. It's going to be tough to go against grunts with grunt mine in mass or equal numbers. And obviously, like a marine ball with grenades and a Spartan and a forge hog and things like that is very difficult to deal with. So you just have to play around that, play a different style, harass minis. And if your opponent obviously is good, they're going to just trade minis with you anyway. So you're going to be on even footing going into Tech 2. And that's where she really... Tech 2 is really tough for Kinsano, especially if you don't have a big lead. And the reason for that is because of the lack of core vehicles. So vehicles are built quite regularly on Tech 2. But the Flame Hog is just outmatched by Marauder and Warthogs, so that puts her down against any other leader. She has to play into the infantry. So that transition from the Marines and the infantry ball in Tech 1 into Tech 2 can be very good, especially with the red line glitch. So what the red line glitch is if you get red line level 1, obviously it only lasts 60 seconds, but red line level 2 is permanent. So if you have a marine ball and you have grenade thrower, there's a glitch where if you research combat tech and you have red line 2, it gives them red line again. So you will have red line on all of your marines again. So that timing can be really good, getting back the 8% damage and the 25% speed, and then you can cause more harassment capabilities again. And obviously get your hero out on Tech 2, you can do harassment from that. And your aim is just to turret up, try and get a second base, and then just get into the late game. So the late game is where Kinsano becomes very strong. She has some very good drops, so she has the Flame Warthog drop. She has the Hell drop as well. If you're not going down the red line route, you can use the Hell drop as stuns. You have to be very accurate with it. Usually you would use it to kill a leader with snipers. So like Atriox, for example. Atriox's Chosen is very powerful, but quite squishy. So if you can time a Hell drop, kill him, your snipers take him out, you're gonna win that Tech 1. So she has the Flame Warthog drop, which drops in veteran Warthogs. That can be very good for harassing around the map. But the best part of Kinsano is the Firestorm Assault Group. Now, when we compare her to Cutter, the drops are very similar, but the problem is this drop, it drops in with Hell Charge. Now, Hell Charge, it was buffed in the last patch. It's still not really a viable option to take on first point or second point. But when this drops with Hell Charge, it's so strong. So you drop it down, it stuns everything, and it just cleans up. You combo that with a Kinsano Flame Wall from the hero as well. You're almost wiping 100 pop armies with this bad boy. It's such a good combo, and that's essentially where you're playing to with Kinsano, and that's what makes her so strong. If you're behind in the game, you probably won't be able to get to this point. It'll be tough for you. And then the point after that, so her ultimate ability is Inferno. So Inferno is a very good leader power. Don't get me wrong. But it's very counterable if you're behind. So your opponent, if they're ahead, they have extra power. They're going to get fortifications. They're going to have engineers on the base. They're going to have nightingales on the base. They're going to have shield gens on the base. And that makes it all very tough to just go straight into Inferno, drop it on a base, and try and strip it with your leader, which is generally the case. So you have to play a bit more patiently than that sometimes, but every game can work out different. Generally, you will go Firestorm Assault Group first all of the time because it's such a good drop. It can completely change the game, like completely. You can go from behind to way far ahead. It is an absolute insane drop. And when we start getting into late game and stuff like that, she has the Napalm missiles, Napalm level 3, very good. And the Flame Warthogs, so Tech 3, when they get their Tech 3 upgrade, this is where they become very strong. So the incendiary grenades, and then you have red line 2 as well in the late game. You've got hogs flying all over the place. Her late game is just so strong, and it just keeps getting stronger. Redline 2, obviously with the permanent buff, it makes her vultures basically like fucking Desi Banshees flying around the map. That's over exaggerating, but you get the point. If you see some Redline 2 vultures from Kinsano flying around the map, they are very fast. So you've got these flying vultures with these nukes that can just take down a base in seconds. It's absolutely crazy. The one downside, I guess, to Redline 2 in the late game is that it doesn't affect Hornets. So you'll see that Boundless Siphon and the passives from Decimus affect his Banshees still, but they actually removed it from Kinsano's Hornets in an earlier patch, which was crazy, but they were super strong. But that probably wasn't the best way to go around it. How can you give Decimus's Banshees passive buffs, but you take away Kinsano's? Even if they are strong, it should have just got a slight nerf to the Hornets and let them keep it, because that's one of her special powers. That's what makes us so unique compared to the other leaders. So overall, in the late game, Kinsano, yeah, very good. So aside from the vehicles, which does really hurt her, we're going to put Kinsano in the B tier, but slightly ahead of Cutter. She's a very fun leader to play. I love playing Kinsano. It feels so rewarding when you're ahead, but can also be very frustrating when you are behind in the game. Okay, so up next, we're going to have Shipmaster. Shipmaster, also a very good leader on the banished side, so automatically being a banished leader is automatically going to be good in the meta. Does have quite a skill gap to learn, understand, and play, but once you have mastered Shipmaster and his abilities, he is so damn good. So damn good. Nobody can really touch him with the leader powers and the abilities he has, the capabilities he actually has. Like, literally, when we talk about 200 IQ players, Shipmaster is the master of 200 IQ players. Like, there's so much crazy shit you can do with him. Obviously, we're only talking from a 1v1 perspective, but when you go into 2s and 3s with a Shipmaster on your team, there's so many combinations you can do using his abilities with displacement and leader powers like that. It's insane. So, we'll talk about the bad first, because this is going to be quick. There isn't a lot of bad things about Shipmaster. So, just like Kinsano, his hero, not so great on Tech 1, not so great on Tech 2, not so great on Tech 3. So, there. The Honor Guard is... I would have to weigh up all the heroes in the game and do a proper analysis on them all to see who is the best and worst, but off the top of my head, the Honor Guard is probably one of the worst heroes in the game. For many reasons, really. Outside his Cloak, so he's good with Cloak against Banished, so the Honor Guard against Banished on Tech 1 can work, but it's still not great, because usually when a person goes up against Shipmaster, they will be going Scouts with an upgrade, which provides Detect. So that's where the Honor Guard just gets shut down, and the reason Scouts is usually the only counterplay against Shipmaster is because he has Cloaked Grunts, so he has Elite Grunts, Cloaked Grunts, and he has the Honor Guard, which also goes into Cloak, so it just makes sense going Scouts and going Detect. He also has Ghosts as his third option on Tech 1. So going Ghosts are very good. Shipmaster and Arbiter, the only leaders available that have Ghosts, and Ghosts are the best scout in the game, no doubt about it. The shield makes them so strong, the maneuverability, and the Rams as well. Rams are so strong in this game, so when you're coming up against Jackrabbits and things like that, and the shield gives you the edge against the choppers. So Ghosts are very good, best shooter in the game, so he has that on Tech 1 as well. But he doesn't just have any Ghost, he has Shipmaster Ghosts. So you commit to Banished Raid 1 and Banished Raid 2, all of a sudden you have these Ghosts that have faster... not only have a fast cap rate, but they can now capture power nodes. So most leaders will have to, if they go Scouts, will have to build infantry to capture the power nodes, with the exception of Captain Cutter and Shipmaster. So the fact you can go Ghost, which is already a super strong Tech 1 option, and also capture power nodes, gives you so much map control and so much ability to control the map and get into Tech 2, because it's so hard to deal with mass scouts in this game. Sometimes you end up overcommitting, and even if you do manage to deal with them, you're already behind your opponent's Tech 2 building Rangers. It's insane. So Ghosts are very good from that aspect. The Honor Guard, back to the Honor Guard, in just any sense, like, as soon as Tech 1's over, he falls off so much. Unless you have really good micro, his veterancy has vetted up to Vet 1 or Vet 2 from Tech 1. You can make him work, but it's very rare a player will make the Honor Guard work. And one of the biggest problems of the Honor Guard is the assassination animations. He's a melee hero. The assassination animations may look cool, but in a competitive game, it absolutely screws likes of the Arbiter, Spartans, and the Honor Guard. So if he gets caught in that, he's going to die if there's an army nearby. Like, there's no doubt about it. And you can't do anything about it. It's not your fault. He's a melee hero. He has to get up close and personal and slash them and do this cool animation, sticking the sword through their head. And he will just die. And that puts you so far behind if that happens on Tech 1. The other option, obviously, is that he gets weak and you're forced to use your extraction. And extraction is such a good leader ability to get away from your opponent's powers. But we'll talk about the leader powers and the mobility a bit later with Shipmaster. So other options, he has the elite grunts. Now, again, Arbiter and Shipmaster, the only two leaders that have elite grunts, the only two leaders that have ghosts. Now, elite grunts are extremely fast, way too fast. Like, they need to be nerfed. They're faster than the brute grunts that the other banished have. They're faster than Marines, but not only are they faster, they output, for some reason, a lot more damage. And on top of this, they can go into cloak. So if a UNSC doesn't have snipers, they can go into cloak. They can get free shots on your army. But on top of that, if you don't have enough snipers, because they're that goddamn fast, they will kill your snipers before you can kill their grunts, and all of a sudden you now have no detects. These grunts are in cloak and they're just running riot, wiping your army. And on top of that, we have this new finding that was found within the last year or so, called the nerd strat. Yes, air quotation marks are being used right now. The nerd strat. You probably heard about it, you may have not. But the nerd strat is just, it's completely broken. The power income you get from it, it's not only broken in ones, but it's even more broken in twos, and it's even more broken in threes. And the reason for that is that one power node gives all of your teammates the same amount of power income. And what the nerd strat is, and we'll probably do a different video on this and how to do it, but you would take Cloak's grunts, like, almost immediately in the game. You would send your grunts straight to the power nodes, and you would cap all 5 power nodes in under a minute. If you get so good at this, you can do it in under a minute. So you have 5 power nodes in under a minute. But you don't have to kill the Sentinels because you went into Cloak. The Sentinels can't shoot you. You've gone into Cloak, you capped 5 power nodes. That is, what, 7.5 power per second. You're only just getting your first generator up and upgraded, which gives you 6 power per second. So you're getting so much power early on, but in a team game, your whole team's getting this power. You'll be Tech 2 before your opponents even have time to push or retake the power nodes, because they have to kill the Sentinels and retake the power nodes off you. And if that happens, you go back into Cloak, you take them back. So you're constantly on your node game. There's nothing they can do about it, especially at a higher level when you have a good team who can control that. It's just so broken, it's insane. Obviously, you have the same with Arbiter as well. The difference with Shipmaster is that he caps nodes a lot faster. The Sentinels will, in some cases, try and retake the nodes, but all you have to do, you stay in Cloak and you kill the Sentinel that tries recapping it. and then the other two will just never recap it. So that's the nerd strat. It's very good. Stronger in teams, so stronger in 2s and 3s than it is in 1s. You would tend to get clutch grunts later in 1s than you would in 2s and 3s. And 2s and 3s, you rely on your teammates to carry you in that early game while you just get them all the power against Tech 2. So they're the options for Shipmaster on Tech 1, but it doesn't stop there. He gets better and better. Yeah, he gets better and better. You won't believe it, but he does. So third point, and we talked about third points earlier, where this is where your nukes really come into play. So there's no reason not to pick another third point for Shipmaster, apart from Glassing Beam. So Glassing Beam, it's the pain in everybody on Reddit. Everybody talks about how broken Glassing Beam is. It's a very good leader power. I wouldn't say it's broken because there is counters to it. Like if you get really good at splitting and you're noticing, yeah, you split out of it. It's not value for money. It doesn't kill a lot of units in that sense. But you see, even when I play lower level players in freeze and things like that, when I'm solo queuing, I'll drop a Glassing Beam, and the opponent will either just stand there or sit there and just let me blaze down his whole army. And sure, in that sense, yeah, that is broken, but that's your fault. That's your fault. So Glassing Beam is a very good lead power, especially if you can get them in a choke point, if you can combo it with stuns in team games. Glassing Beam is just overall a very good leader power, and most Banished do have it, so that's why Banished also are very good in this game. On top of that, fourth point is where Shipmaster really starts to take hold. So we talk about timing pushes a lot in RTS games. Leaders have very strong timing pushes, where if you're built to perfection, you push at this point in the game with a timing push and you end it. Like that's it. Like, the opponent can't do anything about it. You usually stop the game there. So fourth point, Spirit Support. Spirit Support, very strong fourth point. Drops in 2 Vet 1 Engineers, a Vet 2 Hunter, and a Vet 2 Ranger. Very strong counter units on Tech 2. You're pushing with Locust at this point. You can usually kill an Expo, put your opponent behind and end the game, and you can just keep stacking this drop all game. It is a very strong fourth point for him. Other leader powers he has, so if we talk about Shipmaster's maneuverability, not only does he have these super fast ghosts, these super fast grunts, but if you are going the raid 1, raid 2 option, his Marauders are also very fast. His Wraiths are also very fast, and in the current meta, Tech 3, generally, especially in Banished Mirrors, is going to be a Wraith war, so the fact you have faster Wraiths, you can dodge the shots, you can dodge the Scorch Mortar, you can outmaneuver your opponent in those Wraith battles and usually win the fight. So that also makes him very strong. But we talk about his maneuverability leader powers. So combining it with the beam, you have Extract, you have Teleport, you have Displace, and you have Tactical Gateway. 4 powers that can really change the battle. So your opponent tries killing you with a Scatter Bomb or Mac Blast or something like that, or their own Glassing Beam, you Extract out of there. Not only does Extract get your army out of there, it sends you back to your home base and you heal up the army. Like, it heals you as well. On top of this, if you're getting pushed on a Tech 1, Tech 2, Tech 3 basis, you could be anywhere on the map. You Extract back home. Not only does your army get back home to defend because you fucked up and you're out of position, but it heals the first 4 pads on your base. So even if your opponent's like trying to take your gens out or something like that, you have them on the front. You're going to heal your generators with Extract, get back, defend it, and push them off. On to the next point, later in the game, you will have Teleport as well. So Teleport, you can avoid their leader powers, just the same as Extract, and teleport to a different location. You can outmaneuver your opponent, you can jump on top of them, you can retreat. Teleport is such a good leader power to get out of almost anything. Now, his unique ability, Displacement. So we talk about Displacement being broken all the time. You can displace the enemy army anywhere on the map. So let's say you're in a base trade situation. Like this actually happened in a show match the other day. Don't try and base trade a Shipmaster. They're going to take your base down faster than you take theirs down because they can displace you away. So you're in a base trade, they displace you across the map, nowhere near your own base to defend it, nowhere near their base to attack it. All of a sudden, they've just took down your main, they're then taking down your expo. By the time you get to their base to take down the main, they're already very far ahead in that point. But there's also many combos with displace. As I talked about earlier, in team games, very good combos with displace. Displace into eradication. There's all sorts of combos with displace you can do. Now, but if we in terms of wands, let's say the Shipmaster's on the back foot. He's got a cloaking gen up. He's got a shield gen up. He has counter units. He has his army under his shield. You can't touch him. You're trying to push. He displaces you in a choke point to the back of his base with all his counter units under a shield. You can't touch them. And then he beams you. So what displace does, it groups the units up into a choke point so they're stuck together. And the AoE of the beam just completely wipes you out while the counter units finish up everything else. And as a UNSC player, you have no teleport. You can't get out of there. You just got absolutely screwed from a power that costs you 500 power with the beam on top, 350 blue, 200 power. You just got wiped out, and he has his full army still. He's walking straight to your expo. You have to rebuild, send all these resources, and you just got wiped out by 2 leader powers. It's just absolutely insane how good Shipmaster is. Not just with these 2 leader powers, but on top of everything else he has in his kit as well. Then on top of that, he has Tactical Gateway as his ultimate, which can get him anywhere on the map in a given second. He can wait for the perfect timing and just completely obliterate you, end the game. There's no stopping it. So, Shipmaster, I know you know where I'm going to place him after discussing all of that. So, his other leader power, he's got Mass Cloaking. Mass Cloaking, you kill your opponent's detect. You go Mass Cloaking, your opponent can't see you. Same with the Cloak Grunts earlier in the game, he's wiping you out. But not only does it give you Cloak, you now have a speed boost and a health siphon on top of that. So the army's still even stronger. And Shipmaster as well, he has access to Glassing Beam level 3. So not all Banished do. Some Banished have access to level 2, Glassing Beam level 3. Glassing Beam level 3 was slightly nerfed. It's slower. So you can see it coming faster, but it does a lot of damage. So overall, when we talk about Shipmaster, he has such a huge amount of options and outplay capability. If you're not killing him on Tech 1, which can also be a struggle, you're really going to struggle in the late game against a very good player. But like I said, he does have a sort of skill gap where it does take a lot to learn and practice this. But Shipmaster, he's going to be in our S tier. There is so much about him that needs to be nerfed and brought down to be balanced with the other leaders. There's just no reason not to put him in S tier, really. And we should all be thankful that his hero isn't any good compared to other heroes, because if he had that hero as well, there would be no reason not to actually play Shipmaster. He's good on pretty much every map. You can't really push him and put him behind. You might get lucky with some sort of cheese, take him down. But aside from that, Shipmaster is going to be placed in our S tier. Okay, guys, so up next, we're going to talk about Commander Jerome. Now, Commander Jerome used to be one of my top played leaders, one of my favorite leaders. I think playtime him for me actually overtook Cutter at one point. So that was how much I played him, and I had a lot of success with his combos, the Mantis drop, the Victory Mine drops, the turret stuns, and things like that. But there came a time where, for whatever reason, they just completely butchered Jerome, riddled with nerfs. They nerfed so much stuff, primarily being his speed. There was some Mantis nerfs as well in some of the patches. there was a Inspire or a nerf, and they did buff Mastodons a little. So when you see a huge Mastodon ball is really strong. In Halo Wars 2, it just takes so long to build and so costly to get up that by the time you manage to get it against anyone good, they just don't let you. You're already broke. You've got no units on the field by the time you get it up. They've got mass pop running at your base and stripping all your pads, and you just can't afford it and get to that point. And if you do manage to get to the point of having a full Mastodon ball, then that's really on your opponent. Your opponent's fucked up. They've let you get there. There's an issue they've done. So we wouldn't really put him high up on the tier list because of the Mastodon ball being OP or too strong or whatever, because he shouldn't really get to that point. He's so costly. And the hero himself, I think, is probably the most costly hero in the game. Like, his upgrades are absolutely crazy. 400 power on Tech 1, plus your 275 to actually get out the Jerome in the first place. That's 675 power on Tech 1. You may as well just go Tech 2 and spam Hogs, because it works a lot better. You're relying on this one unit for all of that power to take on huge armies, and it's really risky, because if you lose that Jerome, then you're just dead. You lose Jerome on Tech 1, the game's over. You may as well resign. But you can be rewarded if you can keep him alive, get him in the Mantas, get him Vet 1, maybe even Vet 2 with some good micro, and there's a few little techniques you can do, such as the Mantis Wiggle. Mantis Wiggle makes it shoot faster, so you can output more damage and things like that. So if we talk about Jerome's Tech 1 these days in high tier, in any series really or tournament, Jerome wouldn't really be picked because it's so easy to count that hero. You would have to play an infantry style. I've seen Jackrabbits work with the Time for Heroes buff, but Time for Heroes only goes to 40 population, and it's really not worthwhile going Time for Heroes 2, which increases it to 6 population. So usually you would see snipers, infantry play, but that's not really unique. Cutter does that better. Other leaders have the same units, Marines and snipers, so it's just mediocre when it comes from a UNSC point of view. And as we know, Banished is very strong, so he just gets destroyed by Banished. Even if he does manage to go Mantis and Hero, a couple of choppers, jump pack brutes, chosen, whatever, normally can kill Jerome quite easily, and the game's already over, so he lacks there in Tech 1. When we do get to Tech 2, Hogs is a good player for Jerome. You'll see people going Hogs a lot, maybe some Combat Tech Marines, but that's just because it's the general meta for UNSC, to be honest. So he's really too power hungry and expensive to get online to get to a good position to compete at a high level. Like I said, the Mastodon ball is just very strong, and any good player will just target your gen. You lose a gen as well, the game could be over. You're going to really struggle playing Jerome. I know there's a lot of success in teams with Jerome, and that's because of his Inspire bonuses. So Inspire works on your teammates, and it stacks as well. So you will see like a combo of Forge and Jerome in 2v2s, which, I mean, from a high level, it's not a great combo, but it can carry you to victory. It kind of works like the self-healing leaders, that it's that strong. It's just a passive buff that you have all of the time, and it's hard for your opponents to deal with, especially at a lower level when players don't know how to deal with these leaders. The buffs really carry you to victory without you having to do too much work. So the Inspire buff from Forge and Jerome can work really well together in that sense. And if you can manage to get the Mastodon ball, it is usually easier to get up in a 3v3 game. Not so much a 2v2 or 1v1 game, but I've seen it many times in 3v3, and it is really difficult to kill. The Inspires, the heals, you got Nightingales in there, really difficult to kill, so that's what kind of boosts him up a little bit. But this is a 1v1 tier list. We're not going to talk about teams too much. And as you get into the later game, during Salvage was buffed, along with a scatter bomb in one of the patches. We're talking years ago now. It is a good leader power. It's kind of a good nuke, and it inspires units as well. So using it, you want to drop it on the enemy and your own units in a fight. You're going to get that buff, and you're going to do some damage to opponents as well. But But when we talk about his later game and Omega Team, his ultimate power, Omega Team are very expensive. When you compare Omega Team to something like a Deci Drop or the Retriever Sentinel, so Retriever Sentinel is slightly more expensive, but it does so much more work than the Omega Team could ever do. The Omega Team is really a glorified hijacking team. So if your opponent's going vehicles, which is why we say Jerome counters Forge very good, but if Forge doesn't go the Grizzly Drop, Jerome doesn't really counter Forge. Forge is very strong for a UNSC leader. If he doesn't play into that Grizzly Drop, you're not going to take 2,750 blue from him just by hijacking, and they're good against vultures and wraiths and things like that as well, but that's all they're good for in the late game. They're not affected by infantry upgrades, so they don't get stronger. They can't scale throughout the game, so when it gets past the 15-20 minute mark, dropping Omega Team is just useless. It's a waste of money. There is timing pushes, as we mentioned before, with the Omega Team. If you can get them in and afford it around the 10 to 11 minute mark, then sure, it's going to be very good at that stage of the game. But in a high level end-to-end game, you're not going to have 1800 blue, 1800 power stacked up at 11 or 10 minutes in the game. So it's very tough for you to get to that point. And his whole gameplay is involved around the Inspire abilities. So, like, everything drops Inspire. The Salvo, the Mines, the Turret Drop, and his Leader. And one of his last leader powers we're going to talk about is the Field Promotion. So, Field Promotion isn't a bad leader power for late game. Can give you a slight edge, especially if you use the base glitch. So, the Field Promotion base glitch is where, let's say, you lock your base and you build a ton of vultures in the base, or whatever units you want to do. I give vultures a prime example because that's normally the base cracking tool the UNSC have for the later stages of the game. You drop Field Promotion on the locked base, and every unit in there will be Vet 1. So they'll all come out Vet 1. And a Vet 1 unit gives so much damage, health, and armor, so they're a lot stronger than others. If he had combat salvage on top of that, that'd be a really good player, but unfortunately he doesn't. Pre-nerfs, like, so before all the pre-nerfs, things like that, Jerome would probably be sitting high B tier, in the A tier, because he was very good, he was very strong, he had some good combos, but now he's just too expensive and his leader's just no good on Tech 1. That you'll see games where people do make him work, but it's normally where you would have to play a perfect Jerome and your opponent would have to slack on whatever leader they're playing, and he just can't really contend with the meta leaders. So we are going to be putting Jerome down in the C tier. He's not totally awful. You can make him work, especially in teams. Maybe against the B and A's, definitely the D's. But unfortunately for me, he just doesn't have enough to make it into the high tiers in a competitive game. So next up, we're going to be talking about the Arbiter. Now, people thought Arbiter wasn't very good for a good, I would say, 12 to 18 months. And constantly, I was just losing to good Arbiters on the ladder a lot. And I was just complaining about how broken he is, how strong he is, and people just, for some reason, didn't agree. And then there became a point in a couple of tournaments where Arbiter was literally the top pick every series, and he was winning every single game. And that's the moment everyone started clicking on of how good Arbiter is. And then after that, obviously, came the node strat that people started to discover. So that made him even better than he already was. And Abby really came into dominance after one of the last patches where they buffed Conduit of Rage for no specific reason at all. Fair enough, Abby did need a buff at the time, but the way they went about it, the Conduit of Rage was not the way to make him stronger in the meta than he should have been. And in fact, it had obviously the adverse effect. It made him too strong. Extremely strong, to be honest. So he works like Shipmaster. He is an elite leader, so he has access to ghosts, he has access to elite grunts. As we mentioned in the Shipmaster part of the video, Ghost are the best scout on Tech 1. They have the shields. You can, with good micro, get your weak Ghost with no shields out of the fight, recoup the shields, and go back into the fight, so you're not really losing health. You don't have to heal them up. And he has elite grunts as well, which are very strong, really fast, fastest T1 unit compared to infantry. And you can also node strat with them, so you can cloak them up, go into cloak, tech the nodes, and get all that power income. So RB on Tech 1 overall very strong. The difference with Arbiter to Shipmaster is the hero unit. So RB actually has a very good hero unit. It is a melee unit, so thank God for the assassination animations, because that kind of does make him a little bit bad, but not too much, because he's still very hard to kill. So Arbiter's Y ability sends him into rage mode, and when he attacks in rage mode, he actually heals, and he tends to out-heal a lot of DPS. So you could be in a fight, or he could be killing your pad, and you're there trying to kill him, stop him killing your gen with 60, 40 pop, and he's just out-healing your whole army. It's impossible. You got to get stuns off on him to be able to stop that. So that's where he comes really strong. And that's even on Tech 1. He just gets stronger throughout the game. So Tech 2 is where he really becomes unkillable. But also within his Y ability is he drops the Conduit of Rage circle around him, so any units within the vicinity will get the Conduit of Rage buff of the level you have already unlocked through leader power, so 1, 2, and 3. And when we talk about the Conduit of Rage, this is his unique leader power ability. His whole style and whole play style is around the Conduit of Rage, and for very good reasons. So what Conduit of Rage is if you have it unlocked, every time you drop a leader power, the vicinity of that leader power has a radius around it, which buffs the units within that radius for Conduit, and it just gets stronger as it goes on. So the more leader powers you can drop, the more buff your army is going to get. So your army is essentially always going to be stronger than your opponents in every fight if you can time the leader powers right. So the buff lasts 10 seconds and it no longer stacks. So it used to stack. So you could drop 6 leader powers within a second and you would get 60 seconds of buff to your units. And that is a damage buff, a speed buff, and a healing buff. So 3 of the major mechanics in the game that make your army stronger than your opponent, especially if you've got your upgrades, your global upgrades to match them as well, you're always going to win that fight. There's no doubt about it. Unless they can play around it with leader powers and just avoid you. So Conduit of Rage level 1 actually gives a 20% speed boost and 15% damage, and that is your second point. So you can use that immediately in the first fight. And we talk about RB being very strong in the late game. So Arbiter, late game, S tier all day. He is extremely strong in the late game, and that's because you have unlocked more leader powers. So more leader powers for Arbiter means more seconds of being buffed by Conduit of Rage, makes him stronger in every fight throughout the game. And he also has other leader powers in the late game, like mass stasis and stasis. So he can stasis your half your army, kill the other half, nothing you can do about it. Comes on too fast, you can't teleport out of it. It's unavoidable. Or he can use mass stasis, which is the same as stasis but a bigger radius, and that really helps him in base trades. So he could easily mass stasis your army, kill your base, and then run away before you can even react or do anything to it. So that makes him very good as well. When we go on to the later stages, so Conduit of Rage level 2, 28% speed buff, 30% damage. The damage has just doubled within 1 leader point to 30%. Now when we go higher on tier 3, 35% speed and 45% damage. You drop that on your army, you see him running around his army running around like a madman. There's no escape. Your army's going to die. It's very difficult to deal with when you get to the late game. You do not want to handle an Arbiter late game. It's very strong, and he just gets stronger and stronger. The reason he gets stronger and stronger is because of this leader power called Power Surge. So what Power Surge does
is it reduces the cooldowns of all of your leader powers. So why is that good for Arbiter? Because it's based around Conduit of Rage. Every leader power he drops, he gets his army buffed. So late stages of the game, 35% speed, 45% damage buff on, yeah, everything. It's crazy. And it lasts quite a while as well. I can't remember. So the duration is 10 seconds each leader power. And let's say he has 4 leader powers. So he could have 40 seconds of pure 45% damage and 35% speed buff. And when we talk about the cooldowns with the power surge, reducing the cooldowns, those leader points come faster, so they come back faster. So we actually have some stats here. We're just going to talk about level 3. We're not going to talk about all of the levels, but if you do want to know the stats of any leader and any leader power, it's all written in the Halo Wars 2 guide I wrote, which is in the description, so you don't have to troll the game files to try and get it. Makes it easily readable for you guys to grab. So teleport, minus 18 seconds on the cooldown. Stasis mine, minus 30 seconds on the cooldown. Plasma bolt, minus 45 seconds on the cooldown. Stasis, minus 45 seconds. The enforcer drop, minus 60. Mass cloaking, minus 60. Mass stasis, minus 60. So you can see the huge reduction. And in a game where the meta is literally based around leader powers, whoever has the best leader powers and does the best leader powers in the game will generally win. And when we get later into the game, he doesn't really have any nukes. So nukes, obviously we talk about the third point nuke for many leaders. That is kind of his downside in the early game. But he does have Plasma Bolt. So Plasma Bolt is pretty much a meme on first point. Plasma Bolt 1 isn't very good. You don't normally take it earlier in the game. It's more of a late game power. But Plasma Bolt 3, dropping those 3 Plasma Bolts, can wipe an army, can obliterate an army. So he has that in the late game as well. So he just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. The thing he lacks, it's kind of similar to Shipmaster, really. Because of the elite grunts going in cloak, I say he's susceptible to scouts on Tech 1. Not really. Your opponent will go scouts on Tech 1. If you go grunts, yeah, you're going to lose the Tech 1 and they could get ahead and you could lose the game early on. So that's what you want to avoid. So you have Ghosts. You usually would have to commit to Ghost to prevent that. So Ghost can deal with the scouts very easily. That just means you're going through on even ground. But that's good for you because the later the game goes on, Arbiter gets stronger and stronger, as we mentioned. But I have had a lot of success recently in the early game. So if you can bully him in the early game, usually, unless you're playing as a top player, they will abuse the shit out of the elite grunts, and it's really hard to deal with. So he's kind of, for me, in between S and A. I don't think he's as good as Shipmaster. People say RB beat Shipmaster in head-on, but a lot of the most recent data on the high-level show matches and tournaments suggests that that Shipmaster has really been beating Arbiter just because of that 4th-point spirit support push. Is really hard for him to deal with. It doesn't allow Arbiter to get to the late game. If it does go any later, sure, RB is probably going to come out on top. And maps where he can get into the late game, like Rift, for example, does allow him to obviously overcome Shipmaster. But we're just going to drop him in the A tier for now. And again, if I have missed anything with Arbiter, make sure to drop it in the comments. So now on to everybody's favorite leader, what you see on Reddit, the forums when they existed all the time, Decimus and his favorite Banshees. So everybody's saying Decimus Banshees are OP. And I mean, I can see the point of view why people think that. Other not so good. It is because of his passive buffs, Boundless Cypher, Boundless Fury. But we're going to start with his Tech 1, what makes him strong. Tech 1, into Tech 2, into Tech 3. So obviously he's a banished leader. He has access to choppers. He has grunts with Grunt Mine, which can counter scouts. He also has a very good Jump Pack Brute chopper push, and that's all because of his early leader powers. So the Vortex, The Vortex is a staple for Decimus early on. It's a very strong leader power. It not only stuns units within the radius, but it also reduces their armor on level 1 by 30%, which is absolutely crucial and massive for killing heroes, because usually if you can take down your opponent's hero, they've put a lot of resources into it. It's a very strong unit. You can normally snowball Tech 1 from there and hopefully close out the game. It has access to choppers. Chopper's very strong unit overall on Tech 1, and he's of a rarely leader power, so he's got Killing Frenzy, another good option to opt for. Killing Frenzy, every time you kill a unit, your unit gets a 50% damage boost. Just check. Yeah, 50% damage boost for 6 seconds. So that can be very good in the early game, especially against like a leader like Yap Yap. A lot of cannon fodder, kill a lot of units for free. So you're going to be getting that 30% damage boost for 6 seconds, which can help you a lot against Yap Yap in the early game. And he has access to all the good banished units. The Grunt Mine. Grunt Mine actually beats Grenade. Grunt Mine is very strong, and for 300 power, is very good to go for, because what you're going to do in the Tech 2 and later stages of the game, grunts are going to become even stronger. Even your chopper's going to be even stronger if you can keep them alive, just because of that Boundless Siphon later in the game. So his other early leader powers, he has Siphon and Fury. You normally skip Fury early on, you'll choose that late game. It's quite strong late game, just not so good early on because of the other options you have available to you. But Siphon, so you go to Vortex Siphon. Siphon's also very good because it siphons health from your enemy's units and heals your own up. So very good in a fight early on. And he has the Warlord. So the Warlord, obviously a melee unit again, but he has a pull feature. So you can use him to pull in units to your army at quite some distance as well to be able to kill them. And that's normally very good against heroes also. So you have the Warlord and you have the Vortex to be able to kill any hero. And for a long time, Decimus was known basically as the hero killer. He can very easily deal with heroes all the way throughout the game. So he shuts down people who rely on a hero a lot, like Jerome, Atriox, Colony, Forge, all those who have strong heroes where usually they will go hero every single game, can shut them down. And if that's not helping you in the early game, you then get Glassing Beam on third point, which is also very strong. And after that, obviously, you can easily put yourself into Boundless Siphon. So Boundless Siphon is very strong for Decimus. It makes his units self-heal, and it makes them very difficult to kill, especially infantry. So infantry actually get a bigger boost to Boundless Siphon than single units like vehicles like the Wraith and things like that. So his infantry is very strong with Boundless Siphon, which is why you will see a lot of Decimus players running around with grunts and Grunt Mine, nuking down your pads and fighting your army with them. Not only are they very cheap and expendable, but they're also very strong with Boundless Siphon and infantry upgrades. So that's a very good option for Decimus to boost his economy and keep the pressure on their opponents. And then after there, you move into the Deci drop, and you can drop this nuke from the sky. Basically, you drop in the Deci drop, you put the Y ability, and it's like a reverse eradication. That does a ton of damage. It outputs a ton of damage on the army. But going there, that is all Decimus's drop is good for, really. The Y ability. And being a distraction is a very big distraction to a lot of players. Like, players will commit a lot of army to try and kill the Deci drop when you don't need to. Once that Y ability is gone, he's pretty much useless. He doesn't really put out a lot of damage. He's just really like very tanky, and he self-heals as well. But the glitch with the Deci drop is that he self-heals out of battle, which is absolutely insane. So a lot of situations I've spectated where the Deci drop he's dead basically. He's red bar dead, running away from a fight, and they can't catch him or kill him, so he's just healing up, and he'll come back into the fight full HP. And he's also very good at killing pads, taking down shields with that Y ability, and helping you out in that sense with split pushes and things like that. And then we get into the later stage, the 6th point, the Boundless Fury. So the Boundless Fury, on top of the Boundless Siphon, 2 passive buffs make his army so strong. And it's like we talked about earlier with Forge and Jerome. These are passive buffs, so you don't have to do anything to get them except unlock the leader power. And it just makes your army stronger and easier to deal with stuff. So you're getting a 5% damage boost permanently and a 10% speed boost. And this is where the Banshees come in very strong, because Banshees are already a very fast unit to begin with in the first place. They can fly over terrain, for fuck's sake. So they're just flying around the map, sniping pads, and you're having a very tough time to get them and deal with them. But the thing about Air and the Air OP saga is that they shouldn't really be getting to that stage. I understand in a 3v3 game that it's possible for them to get to that stage of 120 pot Banshee, and that's where it really is a problem. 120 pot Banshee is borderline broken. It's very difficult to deal with. You think of it, you would need one teammate to commit to full Reaver. You don't really want to be going Wolverines, so this is where solo queue becomes very hard, because you do need a coordinated team, and one of the banished players would have to commit to almost full pop Reaver to be able to deal with these Desi Banshees, and then they still have the mobility on you to snipe UNSC bases because they have no shield or cloak, so that becomes very difficult there. And I mean, it's a problem in ones as well. Doing a tech switch, as we call it, would be teching from like full infantry vehicle to full Banshee. While you're putting on pressure, you're building the Banshees up in the background. Your opponents are trying to counter the infantry and vehicle, and then you come out with full Banshee and catch them by surprise. They've got no Reavers, no Wolverines, no anti-air turrets, and you tend to close the game that way. But yeah, Decimus is all about the self-healing and passive buffs he has, which makes his army very strong and very hard to deal with. Like, you will be trying to kill a grunt, and it'll be regenning in front of your eyes, and the squad will just be regenning and regenning and regenning as you kill it, and it's very difficult to deal with because your army is just not strong enough. So you don't really want to allow Decimus to get late game. And even past that point, he has strong actives such as the Siphon level 2, level 3, Fury level 1, level 2, level 3, and also Teleport and Glassing Beam level 2, level 3 as well. So all round, Decimus is a very good, solid pick. Doesn't have quite as many broken aspects as some of the S tier leaders that we're going to be putting down here, but he's a very strong staple pick for anybody across any playlist, and very easy to play as well. So we are going to be dropping him in our A tier. He's going to be slightly ahead of Arbiter as well. I just think he has more about him in the early game. Okay guys, so up next we're going to talk about Colony, and it's quite surprising really that I don't come across many Colony players on the ladder, or he's very rarely picked in the show matches or tournaments I cast or watch. And it is very odd because when you look at his leader wheel and his kit as a whole, he does have all of the tools to make a great leader. But generally, the people you come across playing Colony are people who are trying to cheese you with Goliath, which isn't really the right play with him, because although they are strong, that is pretty predictable and pretty easy to stop when you come across a Colony player. And all this raid camp first cheeses is generally what you expect from a Colony player, so you kind of scout immediately and you already know what they're doing and easily stopped it. So it's a very risky play from them to do that. But that said, Colony is overall a very strong leader. After all, he is a banished leader, and he has some great units and some great leader powers in his toolkit. He does just fall short of the top leaders, in my opinion. There is generally better leaders out there just because of other broken aspects that they have. But as your first leader point with Colony, you've either got the Wall or the Skitterers. Generally, you always want to be going skitterers because they are very strong. They're not too expensive either, and they can keep your units alive. So if you're playing the Goliath, Chopper, or even Grunt's playstyle, Goliath skitterers are very good. That's because Goliaths are so tanky. They can even fight other units, like they beat a Marine in a 1v1. They gain more health with the skitterers as well, and the skitterers output a lot of damage, especially when you get that Tech 2 upgrade. So generally the early game is all played around the skitterers and how strong they are. And he also has the Hunter Captain. So the Hunter Captain is a very tanky unit. He's quite easy to vet up because he's so slow, and he obviously stands still when he's shooting and things like that. So he's quite easy to get veterancy, which makes him even stronger, and there's a lot of difficulty with dealing with the Hunter Captain. What he does lack when he plays the Hunter Captain playstyle, though, especially early on, if you're playing Hunter Captain on a big map, then you're already making a mistake because your opponent's just going to outmaneuver you on all of the minis, all of the nodes, harass your pads and things like that. So it makes things very difficult, and Colony tends to fall into this more defensive playstyle. I mean, he's got probably the best turtle in the game, up there with Arbiter, of course, and that's due to quite a few of his leader powers in the late game, giving him the extra boost. But if we do talk about that third point to fourth point power spikes again, on third point he has the option of really Hunter's Brand or Goliath drop. And we spoke about earlier in the video about these third point nukes that leaders have available. And unfortunately for Colony, Hunter's Brand just really is one of the more underwhelming leader powers. It does come in quick, it's hard to avoid, but it really does not do a lot of damage. And then his other point, which is really good for harassment, so he has the Goliath drop. It's not like a UNSC drop where it comes in super fast and then they can do the damage straight away. You kind of do see it coming, and if you are a good player, you always expect the Goliath drop to come against a good Colony player. So you usually will have like watchtowers on your base and you'll be looking out for it. You'll have some units back ready to defend it, because if you're not prepared for that Goliath drop, it does a hell of a lot of damage, and turrets just aren't enough to stop it. It will take your gens and that will put you behind. But as long as you can deal with it at that stage, you don't tend to have a problem playing against Colony. And as we get later into the fourth point, there's only really one option there. You can either double back for your third point, or you go into teleport. Usually teleport is really good for keeping the Hunter Captain alive and increasing that veterancy on the Hunter Captain, because that's when he becomes really good, especially when he gets his Tech 3 upgrade as well. The Hunter Captain in general as a unit on defense is very tanky, and because of his taunt and the heal Colony has available on his second point, he becomes very strong and hard to deal with. And I do see players all the time making the mistake of trying to kill the Hunter Captain, and he's just unkillable. While you're trying to kill him, the Colony's army is killing your army, and all of a sudden you're losing everything and you didn't kill a single unit. And the Hunter Captain just re-heals because he has a siphon ability when he attacks, plus the heal as well, and plus skitters on top. So he's very tanky, so he's definitely a leader to avoid and be more maneuverable around and try and control the map, which does make him fall into that defensive playstyle, and you usually find yourself on the back foot because of that, and that's why he's fallen into this turtling role. So when we get to the turtling role that Colony has, it's kind of due to a couple of things really. Like, skitterers are very strong. He has the veteran units from the Devastating Host drop, which is probably the best drop in the game. It's just so damn expensive. It's like 1980 blue or something like that, 900 power, something crazy. So it's very expensive to drop in an end-to-end game where every resource matters. But then you have your shields, you have your cloaking gens as well, standard for banished. But on top of that, you have an ability called Battle Hardened. And with veterancy being so broken, it's similar to Cutter's Battle Hardened. So when you're standing still, there's a glitch in Halo Wars 2 where you can only gain veterancy while standing still, which obviously people say it's a bad thing, people say it's a good thing. Personally for me, it's a good thing because veterancy is broken. If everybody gained vet while moving and killing, the game would be completely fucked. They would have to take it out. So I guess you do have to micro a little bit to stand still and get those kills. But while Colony is turtling and sitting under a shield, it's very easy for him to get gain veterancy with the battle hardened ability, and that makes his army so goddamn strong. So he's killing your 120 pop with like 60 pop of units under a shield and a cloak, and it's very hard for most of the leaders in the game to break. They don't really have the utility to be able to break that late game. On top of that, he has symbiotes as well, which he can put up to level 3, and he can drop that on his base, which gives it extra armor. So that's going to make it even stronger and harder to break. And on top of that, he's got the combat repair ability, which also heals his buildings and his units as well. Not as much as the Boundless Siphon from Decimus, but it does heal buildings as well, where Boundless Siphon doesn't. So that also makes him very hard to break. And while you are pushing and trying to attack and break him, a 2-base colony is very strong. He will be harassing you with the Goliath, so you have to always be on your game and looking out for that. So it does make Colony a very strong overall leader. Personally, I don't play him a lot because I find him very slow and boring to play. I prefer the fast action drop leaders, the UNSC, flying around with hogs and things like that, so I don't tend to play that slow play style. But that said, Colony is a very strong leader in the meta, and he is one of these self-healing leaders, like Decimus, like Arbiter, where they get those healing abilities, which make them very strong overall. Healing is very strong in this game when your whole army can heal, and it kind of just carries you forward with no micro. So we are going to be just dropping him probably around the A tier here, behind Decimus and Colony. But when we say A tier, S tier, these are very close. They're not too far away. Like, all these A tiers can beat the S tier leaders. Obviously, players make mistakes all the time, so that can happen. It's just the S tiers just have something really broken about them, like Shipmaster's node strat, his displace, and all the abilities he has. He has all the tools to essentially win any. Okay, so we're finally halfway through the tier list. We've got 8 leaders up and on the tier list, 8 to go. Almost there, guys. Bear with us. This is a lot of information to take in. There's even a lot for me to talk. To be honest, you probably hear my voice faltering every now and again, but we are cracking on with this. So up next, we're going to be talking about Pavium. So another banished leader, so you'd presume is going to be high up, right? According to the tier list. Well, when we talk about Pavium's leader powers, in comparison to the other banished leaders, he doesn't quite have that quality that the other leaders have. Don't get me wrong, he's still a very viable leader, still very strong. He has a strong chopper opener that people like to abuse on certain maps, especially against UNSC. Like, poor UNSC, they just have such a hard time dealing with these choppers. So when we look at his first 2 leader points, you've got the Burnout or you've got the Mega Turret. Now, we'll talk about Mega Turret later on because it really is a late game power. It's too expensive for the early game to get up, and you don't really want to put a Mega Turret in place of your pads. So you don't want to put it in place of your first 5 pads on your Tech 1 base because your economy is going to be shit. Compared to your opponent. You don't want to put it on a mini base because even though they have good range, they do a good amount of damage to infantry, I would say. They are very weak, so easily taken down, and for that cost, just not worth it. So scrap it on your first leader point. It's not something to opt for. It is late game. So Burnout is going to be the obvious choice, and Burnout is usually your first and second choice. And what Burnout does is, obviously, your first Burnout can burn out 2 pads, and your second and third Burnout can usually hit 4 or 5 pads, depending on your positioning. A Burnout is a very good leader point for Pavium. It boosts his economy. It does give him a slight production advantage because it makes units build faster as well, but you usually don't want to build it, use it on like a raid camp or anything like that. It's usually just on your main base, so you're pumping out choppers faster, you're pumping out grunts faster, whatever you want to do there. You're getting units out faster and also earning a bit of money on it as well. And because of Burnout, and because he doesn't have these sort of leader powers in the early game, like the speed boost, the mines, the drops, and things like that earlier on, it does make him very weak in the earlier game, especially when you look at the tools he has. He's probably like a basic banished. if you look at it, because his hero you don't really build Tech 1 because he's very squishy, he's very slow, he doesn't put out the damage that Atriox puts out, so he doesn't have that advantage. And he's kind of like a glorified Y ability, so his Y ability does a fair bit of damage and slows the enemy as well, but you usually want to combo that with his Rain of Fire. But even when you do combo that, Rain of Fire really isn't the best fared point compared to some of the leaders. Like we talk about the fair point nukes again, Rain of Fire just really isn't up to scratch when it comes to that. Probably a little better than the Hunter's brand. It's good against bases. It's probably more used on pads I've seen rather than armies, because armies just really just walk out of it unscathed, essentially. Orbital Designator, we won't talk about that because it's absolutely useless. It comes handy in the later game, whatever. It's a bit of a meme. Ultramines, he drops a lot on mines. That they can be very good when you combo them with Pav stands. So Ultramines are actually affected by Pavium stand, which give them 10 seconds of invulnerability. And I've seen some juicy clips of these mines wiping out armies, which is always good to see. But in a competitive setting, it doesn't really become viable with the Ultramines. With the detect that you'd have by the point you have the Ultramines, and dropping on an army doesn't really work anymore because that was nerfed, so it doesn't really truly drop on top of the army. It like drops off to the sides and things like that. It's very easily to avoid. So again, another underwhelming leader power for him. Full salvage. So full salvage allows you to get the full money back for your pants when you recycle them. So this can be good in situations where you're losing your expansion. You recycle all your pads and all your turrets, you get all your money back for that. So you're not really at an economic loss, but you actually are, because you just lost your second base. Now your opponent's on 2 bases, you may be on 1 base. So that power, really in that situation, although you do get money back, so you're not as far behind as you would be losing it, it's still not a great situation to be in all round. You want something more stronger to get you back in the game rather than that. So full salvage does that. It also gives a slight heal to your buildings. It's not a strong heal. I don't think it's as strong as combat repair. It would be good if it was. That would probably make it a bit more viable. And then you have his ultimate as well. So Pav stand is one of his ultimates, so it is 5th point. And you have the Lich. So the Lich is a very good ultimate, a very good leader point. And depending on where you are in the game, you can make a very good timing push with the Lich. And the reason the Lich is so good, it's not so good against armies. So scrap it against armies. If you drop it, it's just like the close air support. You drop it in, the enemy will run away. You just wasted all that money for nothing. Luckily, it's cheaper and it lasts longer. So you're looking at 600 blue, 600 power for this, which is very cheap for an ultimate leader power. And I've often complained about how cheap it is and how long it lasts. It lasts 120 seconds, and it costs 600 blue and 600 power. So you can make a really good timing push on a base, and you can have that thing sat there for a long time. Combo it with maybe a couple of engineers to heal it, the Enduring Will as well to keep it alive, because it is quite low health and squishy, so it is quite easy to kill with like a couple of anti-air turrets, which makes it difficult to just surprise attack someone. So you'll see a lot of people just wasting it and throwing it down on the main base to try and kill it, but the enemy's going to get back in time and defend that no problem. So you really have to push it with an army, which makes it quite difficult. And another part of Pavium's kit that is just lackluster compared to what other leader powers you have available out there for the other leaders and what strengths they have. So typically, in terms of Pavium, I wouldn't say his hero's that great either. Like I said, the Y ability is probably always used for in most situations. His other leader point, Wraith Invaders. Wraith Invaders are actually very good, okay? They're very good, but they're too expensive. So they're very hard to get online in the mid game. Like, you can't keep spamming counter units and affording to buy Wraith Invaders and counter units to be in them. You will get countered quite easily. So that kind of makes them an unviable option for him as well. So in terms of Pavium, out of all the banished, he is bottom of the banished pile, essentially. And when you look at the UNSC leaders here. They just have more about them than Pavium does, so we're going to be putting him down here in the C tier. Okay guys, so next up, let's talk about Atriox, this man right here. So Tech 1, he has a very strong hero, very oppressive on Tech 1 actually with the jump at brutes. When you look at countermeasures, they drop the mines down as they jump and they actually provide a slur on the enemy when they connect. Also the jump at brute provide a slur when they actually land on units and provide a stun, which can work well with a lot of combos and his leader powers in the game. You combo the jump at brutes with the Chosen on Tech 1, you have a very formidable army that is very hard to deal with, which makes him very strong on maps such as Mirage, Fissures, Frontier. And then you look at his other leader powers. So we have Fortifications. So Fortifications is also a popular option with Atriox. So it reduces the cost of turrets, shield towers, and outposts, so your bases. And it scales with the Fortify upgrade. So things get cheaper the more you research the Fortify upgrade from the armory. This is a very good defensive leader power, and it has 2 levels as well, so they get cheaper and reduces the build times as well on top of that. So it can be very good defensively, good for turtles, things like that. And it makes it very strong with turrets being very strong in this game as well. Now, plasma mines, probably one of the best mines in the game. Like normal mines, really, you drop 3 mines down. They go into cloak. If you have detect, you can easily explode them, so they're no big threat. But the difference with plasma mines is that they leave plasma on the floor, so they're very good for zoning out during fights, and they can kill low HP enemies that are running through the plasma, like fodder, snipers, things like that. So they can be very good utility-wise in a fight. So we move on to Dying Breath now. So Dying Breath is a very, very strong leader power, and probably very overlooked by a lot of people. You don't see many people go Dying Breath until the late game. But what Dying Breath does is that it lasts 120 seconds, and when your unit or army reach 0 health, they will ignore death for 8 seconds. So they get 8 seconds longer in the fight, which is absolutely insane, especially when you're putting it on like Wraiths and your Chosen, already strong units. Obviously, it doesn't work on Scarabs, by the way, but very strong units. It can really turn a fight around. It's a very good leader power because you can combo it with his other leader powers. He has, like, Bulwark provides invincibility for like 2 seconds when that's immediately dropped. You've got Unbreakable as well that provides invincibility for 7 seconds. So you combo all these leader points together. You could be fighting your opponent's army and killing them before they can even touch a unit of your army, which is definitely going to swing the fight and help you win the game. We just touched on Bulwark, so Bulwark provides a heal and the vulnerability as well. He also has Glassing Beam, everybody's fan favorite. Glassing Beam, a very good leader point if you can connect with it. A lot of the high level players will be able to split out of it, negate a lot of that damage, but if you can use it in choke points and stuff, still a very good leader power. Teleport is very good and a popular option for Atriox because he's very easy to vet up, so you'll get vet 1, vet 2, vet 3 very easily with the Chosen because of how much damage he outputs. So you'll want that teleport to keep him alive. There is nothing worse than losing a vet 2 or vet 3 Chosen. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And then his final ultimate leader power is going to be Eradication. So Eradication drops 8 plasma beams that converge on one spot in the middle and causes a huge explosion that does a ton of damage. Like this is the true army wipe ability if your opponent sits in it. You can combo this with like Voridus's Maelstrom with the Eradication, and you will just kill everything. 120 population gone down the drain just like that. That's how strong this leader power can be. So overall, when you combo all those leader powers together and compare him across the others, Atriox is in a very good spot at the moment. He's not completely overpowered compared to some of these higher leaders, but I feel like he's very good on any map just because of the leader points and the strategies he has available to him, and the Chosen is always good all around as well. So Atriox is going to be going straight into our A tier, slightly behind the self-healing leaders, and that's where we're going to drop him. Okay guys, so up next we're going to be talking about Yap Yap, everybody's favorite leader, probably due to his voice lines in the game. He's got some really good voice lines, but when it comes to balance and his spot in the meta and the tier list, we're going to talk about what he has available and where we're going to place him on this tier list. So, first up, he has 3 units, which is a crazy mechanic in an RTS. You would expect somebody who has 3 units for them to not actually be so strong, but in fact, they are very strong, and they're very good at map control as well. You often hear people say, when you're playing against Yap Yap, just ignore the fodder. But that's not always possible. The fodder work like herders, really, and you can't run through them, and they just like herd you off to the side, so it's very difficult to get through and do anything when there's so much fodder around. And then you have the issue of auto-targeting as well. When you're trying to when your units are auto-targeting, they will usually shoot the fodder, like snipers, for example. You need really good sniper micro if you're trying to shoot the units you want to kill, like the grunt riders and the heavy grunts and the rangers and things like that. You'll auto shoot and waste shots on the fodder, which makes it easier for them to kill you, which is very strong in itself. Heavy grunts as a unit for Yap Yap are very strong with all of the upgrades as well. And when we talk about his Tech 1, because he has 3 units, he can grab mini bases a lot easier. Because he doesn't have to commit to the starting opening units like the grunts, the marines, the choppers, the jackrabbits, which all cost money. Like you're looking at 200 blue really in the early game, which is an extra mini gate base for Yap Yap, which is extra economy throughout the game. He's known for mini stealing, so just that mentality of playing against a Yap Yap, your opponent thinks, right, I need to get my mini bases and I need to get them early because the fodder is going to be threatening the steal, and you don't want to lose mini bases or be behind on mini bases against the Yap Yap because his economy is very good because of those 3 units, and you're going to have an uphill battle if that happens. But on the flip side, if you do pick up all your mini bases that early, you're going to lose map control against maybe a starting chopper or some choppers or something like that, against the Yap Yap, some early grunt riders. You're not going to be able to deal with it because you just picked up 3 mini bases in the space of a minute, and your economy is completely shot early on. So you've got to be really careful when playing against Yap Yap. Just that threat early on makes him very strong in itself, but it doesn't stop there. We get deeper and deeper into this. So he has methane wagons, which is kind of his substitute for the suicide grunt. So Yap Yap, the downside of him is he doesn't have suicide grunts to deal with rushes and things like that. So the methane wagon, it gives 20% damage and armor to grunts in the vicinity of the methane wagon, and it also reduces the damage and armor of the enemy by 20%. So that's a huge 40% swing for your army, which is absolutely massive in this game. That is better than infantry level 3. Infantry level 3 gives 10% per level. So already, this can be your first point if you want. You're not going to be able to afford it first point. Most people take it second point, but you've already got a 40% swing at the start of the game. That's going to last you the full game. You can now unlock and build methane wagons throughout the whole game and have this buff there. When we talk about his next leader power, please don't shoot me. We talk about him not having teleport and not having mobility. So yeah, sure, he can't instantly teleport somewhere. But if he gets caught out of position, he can drop please don't shoot me. 15 seconds of downtime, he can run back home, defend, and it works like that. That's his only really mobility thing he has. But the difference is he has to run there, and his army is pretty slow, because usually you would be playing infantry with him. Guilt trip, nothing too major. Reduces the veterancy experience gained when enemies kill your units, so nothing great. Can work very well against Colony. When we discussed Colony's battle hardened earlier, he gets more XP. Yap Yap would give him less XP, but I don't think it's going to make a difference in that matchup at all. You would skip Guilt Trip altogether. It would be your very last leader point usually. Now, Shade Turret drops 4 Shade Turrets, and level 2 drops 6. Now, this used to have stuns, and you used to be able to drop mines and Shade Turret, stun the army in place, drop the mines on top, and the whole army would disappear. Fortunately, 343 did nerf the stun, so they took away the stun from shade turrets, which was a great move because Yap Yap was very overpowered at that point in time. He had so much going for him. And they upgraded the up to the cooldowns on a lot of his leader powers as well because they came back way too quickly. So he's in a lot better spot than he used to be back then. We're talking probably 18 months ago now. But he's still a very strong leader, as you can tell when we talk through all of these points and how he uses them. So shade turret drop, the reason it's so good as well is that you drop 4 turrets. So 4 turrets are very strong. But also, every time you drop the turrets, your leader point bar goes up. So there's a bug where certain drops make your leader point bar go up faster, which when Yap Yap has all these active leader powers, he's just going to out leader point you every single time, which makes it very difficult to deal with because if he's always a leader point ahead, he's essentially always controlling the game. On top of that, he has Glassing Beam, levels 1 through 3, so we've already discussed them for the other leaders. Everybody knows what that's about and how strong that can be. Next up, he has Grunt Dome. So Grunt Dome is a great counter to any nuke ability that any of the leaders have. So if you're quick enough, someone tries nuking your army, you drop Grunt Dome down. There you go. You've stopped it. You've saved your army, and they've wasted a point. You still have Glassing Beam available, and yeah, you tend to swing around the fight. Grunts from Above, another harassment ability that he has. So it drops in 2 Heavy Grunts, Grunt Rider, and a Methane Wagon. And as you upgrade it, it drops in more, bigger vet, more units. This can be very good for harassing bases and things like that. A lot of people tend to choose Grunts from Above if you don't go Methane Wagons early on in the game, because you don't have the ability to build Methane Wagons, but you can drop them in with the drop, so you still get that 40% swing in your army. Get back out there. First 6 infantry units you lose will respawn at home base. Yeah, whatever. Methane Party drops in a series of bombs of methane. Yeah, very, very strong. Drops the methane, similar to the Methane Wagon. It reduces the enemy's armor and damage by 25% this time, though. But that's just the leader powers of Yap Yap. When we talk about his overall, I guess, army comp, and so you stack these leader powers. So let's say you have the Methane Wagon with a 40% swing. You now add on the engineers. The engineer bubble prevents 40% incoming damage. So you now have 60% damage neglected because of those buffs you've got. Like I said, it's better than the global upgrades by double. Very strong. If your enemy manages to break through that and somehow weaken your army just a little bit, you have not 1, not 2, but 3 heroes. Yap Yap has 3 heroes with a Y ability that can heal your whole army to full health. So he has these 3 little goblins that run around, dropping Y abilities on your army, and when their Tech 3 upgrade comes in, the heal radius is huge. Heal up your own army 3 times. So when we talk about the other heals in the game, he doesn't have an active heal. He has 3 units that can constantly heal his army over and over and over, and the cooldown comes down pretty fast. So that's what makes Yap Yap's army so strong. The combination of all these leader powers, the early pressure, and the heroes as well, that could just heal your army. And it's very difficult and very hard to deal with him. And that's why Yap Yap, so I originally did have him in A tier just because of his nerfs, but the more I've played him and played against him, he's very, very difficult to deal with, very difficult to deal against. So he's going to be going straight up into our S tier for this video. Okay, so it's probably about time we got some UNSC in here. We got 5 UNSC left and Voridus as well. So we're going to take a closer look at Serina. Now, Serina is considered one of the lower tier leaders in the community, in the meta, and to an extent, I do agree, but I do think she has her place, especially on maps like Frontier. Your Bedrock and your Fishers maps tend to be pretty good for her, and that's all down to her freezing abilities. One of the issues she has is the weak-ish early game with the Cryo Troopers. The Cryo Troopers are really only good at freezing. They don't output a lot of damage. But what is good about them is the freezing aura that you can get with her second point, Cryotech Advances. So Cryotech Advances is Serina's main point, I would say. It's very good. It allows the nerds to have the freezing aura around them. It allows the cryo troopers to have the freezing aura around them, and the turrets and the watchtowers to have the freezing aura around them as well. It's very difficult to rush and kill a Serina player early on because your units are constantly frozen. There is a bug with the watchtowers where they freeze at like double the rate of the turrets and stuff like that, and they're so cheap and fast to build, so you would just spam watchtowers and everything would get frozen. So that shuts down plays like the Goliath drop harasses and the jump back brutes and all kinds of stuff like this, which also makes it very good against Yap Yap, because Yap Yap can't recap the power nodes against her because his units freeze before he can get the decap, which makes it very difficult, and he has to start capping with other units like your rangers and your hunters and things like that, which are just so slow at capping compared to grunts and marines and other units. So that makes it difficult. One of the other strong parts of Serina is she has the Bison. The Bison is a very tanky girl, very thick, especially on Tech 1, and any leader usually who has a vehicle leader on Tech 1, so your Forge and your Serina, are difficult to deal with, especially for UNSC. UNSC don't really have a great answer to the vehicles. Obviously, Banished have your Ghosts and your Choppers, which can ram them to death and try and kill them, but you do end up spending a lot of resources to try and kill that one unit, and then you have to deal with the army behind that, because these heroes aren't expensive. Like 300 blue, 275 power isn't overly expensive on Tech 1 when you're in these fights, and you can take down, let's say it takes 8 to 9 choppers to kill it, and you manage to get off a good anvil round and kill the choppers before your Forge actually dies, then you're actually up and ahead and your opponent's overcommitted. So vehicle leaders are very good on Tech 1, but she scales as well throughout the game. She's very hard to kill, the Bison. And if all of a sudden she does manage to sneak around your forces and get locked down on your main base and freezes your whole economy, that's when you're really going to start having a problem. So that's essentially what Serina is about, damaging your economy to get ahead. She needs to be able to do that to win the games against the higher tier leaders, because in terms of battling on Tech 1, she does kind of fall short there. And she's got other leader powers, so some great zoning powers like the ice barrier, and she's just kind of a slow build leader. It's really hard to push her, especially if she holds power nodes and she can lock down the Bison in an area. She has very good area denial, very good zone control, which makes it actually pretty good and not too bad. And the thing that she lacks and lets her down is, again, the lack of the new conferred points. So she has something called Seismic Blast and Cryo Bomb. So you can put 3 points into Cryo Bomb and 2 points into Seismic Blast. And this was actually buffed a while ago, so you actually get 2 shots the higher you go up rather than the 1. And this is a very good late game leader power, particularly in like teams and things like that. And the reason for that is because you get 2 shots of the freeze and you get 2 shots of the shatter. So what it does is that Cryo Bomb freezes the units you drop it on, and Seismic Blast shatters them. So in order to use this nuke in the first place, you already have to put 2 leader points into it. And then overall, to make it the best it can be, you need 5 leader points. So that's a very late game leader power, but it's very good at destroying mass air. Very good because it comes down very quickly. You can shatter them and kill them very quickly, so that's is very good for that. Then you have your standard leader points like your restoration drones and your turret drops, which are always average. They've always been good. Restoration drones, turret drop, keeping your Bison alive, and the turret drop provides a stun as well. Now, her best leader power in the late game is probably going to be the cryo drop, and the reason for that is she's the only one that with this drop that can drop in 2 tanks. Vet 1 Scorpion tanks are very strong, and she gets 2 of them. It makes her drop super strong, especially after the Scorpion buff a while ago. She gets some Frost Ravens in there as well, some Cryo Troopers, which aren't too great. It's mainly the tanks. And that drop can completely change the game. It also comes down with a shatter, so if you did go into the Cryo Bomb leader power and you can freeze the units with that, or if you can freeze the units with your Bison or the mines or the ice barrier or the power nodes, however way you want to freeze them, and then drop the cryo drop on top, you're killing a lot of units with that, so that combo can make her very strong later on in the game. And then Her ultimate, I do feel a little underwhelming. The Glacial Storm. It's good for freezing building and freezing the economy. Like if your opponent's on 2 bases and you want to do a split push, you would like Bison 1 and Glacial Storm 1 and send your army to freeze the other one to try and get their economy down. So there is ways for it, but usually Glacial Storm isn't the greatest leader power. It can't be really used on armies because they can get out of it quite quickly. And so that also lets her down. But overall, she's not too bad. She's very annoying to play against. But she ain't too bad, so we're going to be dropping her in the C tier because I do feel like these leaders above her do have a lot more than what she has to beat the other leaders across every map. So like I said, she's good on a couple of maps, but there is like 10 maps in the game. So overall standpoint, leader versus leader matchup and map versus map, she's going to be falling in the C tier. Okay, so next we're going to be talking about Professor Anders, and immediately I'm going to put her up here in the S tier, and there's a reason for that, really. This is where she used to be. So Anders is kind of like the fallen angel, really, like the fall from grace. She used to be very, very good, very, very strong, but she received a huge nerf, a massive nerf, probably over nerf to her R&D ability. So if you're not familiar with the game, the R&D ability reduces the cost and research time of her upgrades, such as like the Spartan upgrade, the infantry upgrades, the vehicle upgrades. And I think it was something crazy like 50% for R&D level 2, and stuff just came on so quickly, and her Tech 2 push was literally unstoppable. Like you could get Combat Tech Marines, Dispersion Nozzle Flamers, and an upgraded Douglas before your opponent could even get anything, and you just push and win the game pretty much every single time. But she was nerfed, and deservedly nerfed, but probably over nerfed, to be honest, which killed her R&D ability, which is now sitting at 15% cost reduction and research time on level 1 and 28% on level 2. Still a really good ability, still probably the bread and butter for Anders. You would go R&D 1 and 2, get those upgrades quickly, and you do obviously still have an edge over your opponent for that. But because you're doing this, you're lacking leader powers, active leader powers like mines and nukes and things like that in the early game to help you win. So you kind of win in the fights based on micro and just having the stronger army, essentially. So you have to really work for your wins with Anders now. Her other option is Restoration Drones and Lotus Mines, but usually R&D 1 and 2 is going to be the better option. Protector Sentinel as well. I mean, late game, when you have mass, Protector Sentinels are very good. And just like one thing we missed in the Serina part as well of the video is that Frost Ravens in mass late game are very good. Can take down Scarabs and super units and heroes very quickly like that. So just touch on that as well from the last section. Third point, arc defense or turret drop is generally what you want to take. So after R&D 1 and 2, you go arc defense, turret drop. 2 options really. Turret drop provides a stun. It's very good against all units. Arc defense, good against vehicles and buildings and things like that. So you can choose your option there. And as we get into the mid-game, later game, you've got your Sentinel Beacon and your Sentinel Synergy. So Sentinel Beacon is a really, really good leader power. So it gives her Kodiak and Siege turrets the ability to summon the Sentinel. So I'm sure we've all been in an Anders Turtle or played as versus an Anders Turtle. And they're spamming Kodiaks like crazy, and these Sentinels are doing so much damage. It's very hard and difficult to deal with, very hard to push, because when they mix in a few Wolverines, a couple of Combat Tech Marines, air becomes not an option, and it's just very difficult for you to push into. So once you set up with that, that's when Anders becomes a pain in the ass and very difficult to deal with. On top of that, you've got your Sentinel Synergy, which, again, if you're playing for the Retriever Sentinel, so her ultimate point is the Retriever Sentinel, you would usually go Sentinel Synergy, which doesn't kick in until you have the Retriever Sentinel. So what it does is spawn the Retriever Sentinel with a shield. It also gives health and damage increase to the Protector Sentinels. If you went for that option to build them out of your base, it does that as well, which again helps them in the late game, as mentioned. But usually you would go to the Sentinel Network. So her 5th point nuke essentially comes as the Sentinel Network on the 5th point. So it calls in 3 waves of Protector Sentinels to sweep across the map, providing vision and an EMP. So it gives you full map vision, realistically, essentially, across the whole map. And drops EMP as well. So very good against vehicles, does a lot of damage against infantry and things like that. But overall, with all those leader powers, with the Kodiaks and stuff, Anders, she's pretty strong. Not super strong, though. She is probably overshadowed by a lot of the other leaders. You can make her work. If you're an Anders main and you grind a lot of games, you could probably be beating some of these leaders up here. But you wouldn't have a high percentage win rate against them. The other thing is Douglas, and the auto-cancel glitch with Douglas. He can take down air very quickly just by animation cancelling and shooting a lot of rockets, a bunch of rockets. So Douglas, very good, very strong hero. Probably the best Spartan out the 3, to be honest. Probably goes Douglas, Alice, and then Jerome. Jerome for cutter there. So in terms of Anders, she was S tier. She's going to be coming down probably around the high C tier to B tier, somewhere up here. She's still very good to play, very fun to play, especially if you can get those Kodiaks and Sentinels online. You can stall out because that is pretty broken. Like the Kodiaks are pretty broken with that leader power. It would be up here. So we're going to be putting her in high C tier for now. You know what? She's probably going to be B tier instead. We'll whack her in the B tier. Okay, let's move on to my boy Forge. Anybody who does watch my Twitch, my YouTube, anything like that will know I absolutely love Forge. The reason I love Forge is because I feel like he's the only UNSC who can actually contend with the Banished leaders. Banished being extremely strong in this meta, no doubt about it, very strong counter units. But I feel like Forge can deal with them pretty well. The Forge Hog being his main asset. So the Forge Hog on Tech 1 comes with the Anvil round as well, as long as you get the upgrade. Even though Banished have access to choppers, he can usually deal with them pretty well. You have access to heavy metal on 2nd point, which can deal with them. But the other aspect, his economy is through the roof. So rolling economy level 1 and level 2 allows you to upgrade the Okay, let's move on to my boy Forge. And anybody who watches my YouTube and Twitch and things like that will know I absolutely love Forge. And that's because I feel like he's the only UNSC who can actually contend with the Banished meta up here. Banished, as we know, are very strong in the meta. And his main asset really is the Forge Hog. The Forge Hog, very good. You get the upgrade of the Anvil round on Tech 1. You can deal with choppers, especially if you go like heavy metal on 2nd point or mines. You can play around mines. And he has good range, good speed, good damage with the Anvil round. All around a very good unit. They did nerf his shields, Tech 2 and Tech 3, so he is a bit weaker now. He did used to be unkillable, absolutely unkillable, so he was very strong. So it was a good nerf to him. But overall, they should have done that same nerf to every leader in the game, every hero in the game. They shouldn't have left other heroes super strong like Arbiter and Colony and stuff like that when touching Forge. It just didn't make sense. His other abilities is the rolling economy, and rolling economy is really what makes him great. So it allows you to build generators and supply pads faster, also allows you to upgrade them for cheaper. So his economy can be through the roof. Upgrading all of your pads early in the game makes a great benefit throughout the game. You find yourself rich and you have so much money you don't know what to deal with, so you can just spam. You can build more production buildings and get out a lot of units, similar to how Pavium works essentially with a burnout, but Forge, it's like a constant, it's a passive, so it's always there rather than an active like burnout. So that makes him very good to start with, and that is essentially the key groundwork that makes him so good. You can outspam your opponent. You don't feel like when you use units you're out of money. You can just rebuild them quite easily, and a free base Forge, very strong. Not only that, as you move into the game, he has one of the best nukes in the game. Scatterbomb is absolutely insane. The reason Scatterbomb's insane is actually not because of the Scatterbomb stats, it's because of a glitch, so a bug. The game can't handle Scatterbomb. Every time a Scatterbomb comes down, the game lags, and it doesn't allow the enemy units to actually run out of that lag. And when you have like cross-country players around the world playing against each other in like a 3v3 and a scatter bomb comes down, you already have that latency, that lag in the first place. The scatter bomb adds extra lag on top, and there's just no getting out of it. It will wipe armies, essentially. So scatter bomb, very good. Especially in vehicle fights. So you've got the anvil round, which slows vehicles down with the Forge Hog. Drop a scatter bomb on, they're just dying. There's no way to get out of that. Makes it very good. Got other standard leader points like restoration drones, Pelican transport as well. So there's a few cheeses you can do with Forge and the Pelican transport. He has it early on, so you can do a few cheeses, but it's not really the best play to do. It's more catching your opponent off guard. And then you have the vehicle drop, so dropping in 2 Vet, 2 Kodiaks anywhere on the map. Anywhere on the map. 2 Vet Kodiaks anywhere on the map. It can help you massively. You can drop them on high ground to gain an advantage in a fight. You can push up on a base and drop them in behind your reinforcements. You don't have to wait to build Kodiaks, which are expensive, can take a while to actually get in the fight, so you can drop them anywhere. This is absolutely insane from Forge. The 2 Kodiaks that he can drop in can just do so much. They have so much utility in the game. Moving on to accelerated assembly. So if you are playing Warthogs, you want to go accelerated assembly. Warthogs costs are reduced and also build faster. Now, the build time could use a buff. To be honest, it only reduces the build time by 1 second, but it does reduce the cost by 25 blue. So it's the cost that's really effective here, and level 2 reduces it to 200 supply a Warthog and then a 2-second build time. Also affects Grizzlies and other vehicles, things like that. So it's still very decent. Combat salvage. Combat salvage is normally a late game leader point that you would use with Vultures. So as you all know, Vultures got a buff to killing bases. Their Y ability does nuke down bases. Very good. So having the ability to combat salvage the Vultures, kill a base, and have the 8 of them respawn back at your main base is absolutely huge in a fight. You wouldn't really use it on Warthogs or things like that. It doesn't really become cost effective, but it does obviously allow you to get rid of the build time to rebuild that army. So if you lose 8 Warthogs, you're going to be looking at a couple of minutes before you can rebuild them all, depending on how many garages you have. So it allows you to instantly repop with that, so it can be worth it there. But Vultures and Grizzlies is really where you want to be using it. Makes it very valuable, very good. And then his final point is the Grizzly drop. So the Grizzly drop, you look at the Grizzly drop and you think, wow, almost 3,000 blue. And I think it's about 450 power. And you think, that's expensive. Like, how am I ever going to drop that in? But you're Forge. You have a bank of money, and it seems just so easy to drop the Grizzly drop in. And it's good for a tech switch if you're playing something that isn't vehicles, and then you drop, and your opponent has the counters to whatever that is. Then you drop in the Grizzlies, free Vet 1 tanks, with the Forge Hog's defensive aura buffing them. Then you drop a heavy metal, a heal, and all this on top. It can make it for a very hard push for your opponents to deal with, and the Grizzly drop is a very good late game timing that you have. And dropping in any unit drops in the game are strong. Don't get me wrong, any unit drops in the game are strong because you don't have to rebuild them, and normally they're very cost effective. So as I said, Forge is probably the only one who can contend with the Banished at the top. So we're going to be putting him in the middle of A here. Leading the UNSC in the fight against the Banished is our boy Forge. All right, guys, down to the final 3 leaders. So let's start with Isabel. Let's talk about Isabel as one of the only 2 UNSC left. So Isabel received kind of an indirect buff with the Scorpions. So those who are familiar with Isabel, she has a leader point called the Best Offense, which gives Scorpions a shield and HP increase as well. So 50% HP increase and 800 SP, which is shield points for the Scorpions. Also gives the Nightingales HP and extra shield as well. So that makes her late game pretty good, but we'll get to that after we have discussed the early game. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, Alice, probably the second best Spartan, especially with her Tech 2 upgrades. So the machine gun, the chain gun is very strong. Like, she can one-man a good 30 population with that thing. It's very strong. On top of that, obviously, she has the slam. Comboing the slam stun with the mech blast and the Lotus Mine and stuff like that can be a good option for her. What makes Isabel pretty good, to be honest, in this Banish meta is the early Lotus Mine. So first point Lotus Mines can be pretty good because Banish will tend to abuse UNSC early on for resource pickup, so that's picking up your power and supply on the map, and then obviously the next step, securing your mini bases. So on maps like Bedrock, for example, if we just take that as an example, the Banished player will always send a chopper to your side of the map to contest your power and your supplies, which is going to set you behind if you don't get it. So being able to have those early mines, sure, it will cost you 75 blue and 75 power, but it'll allow you to secure your blue and power on at least one side. And hopefully, if you're really lucky, the chopper will drive into them and blow up. So that can give you an advantage in the early game, especially on a high level game where those small little win advantages matter. Other leader power, Hollow Decoy, also a very good leader power, because again, like with the Dying Breath and things like that, the auto-targeting of the fodder that we talked about earlier, when units auto-target, they will auto-target the units at the front. So the Hollow Decoy, you have them in front of your army, you're essentially taking free hits on the Hollow Decoys from the enemy and you're doing damage to them. So that's also a very good leader power for her. Accelerated Assembly, just the same as Forge, so she can get those fast hogs out. So Isabel is pretty good with hogs, to be honest. Known as actually being better than Forge at spamming hogs. The thing that lets her down against Forge is the Forge hog is such a huge factor in that matchup. So she can get hogs out faster because Accelerated Assembly comes in at 0.2. So that kind of makes her Jackrabbit play viable on Tech 1 as well. She can get faster Jackrabbits out, which is very good for her. Again, restoration drones she has Mac Blast. I would like to see a slight buff to Mac Blast because it's very underwhelming compared to the other nukes that come available on third point. With a good Mac Blast and all of her other leader powers, I think Isabel, if people started playing her a bit more, figuring it out a bit more, I think she could climb up quite high, to be honest, and deal with Banished quite well because her late game is so strong, very strong. One of the things that does lack in her kit is a drop, so a unit drop like many of the other leaders out. She doesn't have that, so she's reliant really on building units and being stronger. So she has heavy metal as well, so this is when late game really comes in. She can get restoration drones level 3 and heavy metal level 2 like Forge, which is very good in the late game for keeping your army alive. She's got a turret drop, so discuss turret drop, that can provide a stun, good for taking down leaders and things like that. And then we come into the best offense, combat salvage, and ghost in the machine. So the best offense is very good late game if you can get to that point. As we mentioned, the Scorpions, the Nightingales get a shield and a health buff, which, yeah, Scorpions got a buff all around, so Scorpions are very strong, so that's combined with the Nightingales, that is a very strong late game composition. Very hard for Banished to deal with because Scorpions beat Wraiths head on. So Banished are forced to go into Hunters, and yeah, it can be difficult for them to deal with. On top of that, you have Combat Salvage. So comboing the Scorpions with the Combat Salvage, you're going to get 8 of those Scorpions back when you lose them. So her late game gets even stronger and even better. And then you've got Ghost in the Machine. So if your enemy even tries playing vehicles, you can steal half their vehicles, use them against them, or their air units use it against them, and usually win that battle and wipe the battle, and it can turn the tide in your favor. So all around there, Isabel looking pretty good with her leader points, and usually she would be sitting around the C tier, but I've seen a lot more Isabel games at the high level recently. We're not going to quite put her up here because she does lose to these leaders, but we're going to put her along the B tier, so the standard B tier with most of the good UNSC leaders here now. Isabel going to be sitting in the B tier. All right, down to the final 2 leaders now. The Johnson and the Voridus. So both at 2 very different ends of the spectrum, to be honest. Voridus, like, there's no doubt in my mind, and there's probably no doubt, no one's going to question this decision. Voridus all the day is going to be S tier. He's by far the strongest leader in the game. He's just very difficult to deal with because you can't stop his Tech 1 in any way, shape, or form. It's just so strong, and because his Tech 1's that strong, it snowballs into the rest of the game. So once you're behind versus Voridus, there is really no coming back unless your opponent really fucks up. And this is all down to combat spoils. So combat spoils, what it allows you to do is get resources back from attacking your opponent's buildings. So why is this so good? Because it promotes aggression. So if your opponent's on the defensive, all they're really doing in the game is trying to kill your army. But because you're getting money off of their pads, you're not really behind like the other leaders. Like if you have a rush with any other leader and you lose your army on that rush, it's essentially, we would say, game over. There's no coming back from that. You just lost so many resources out that army. But Voridus can ignore your units, go straight in with jump pack brutes, and just take down pads for fun. And it will take him less than a minute to get enough power off your pads to get Tech 2. And then another couple of minutes to get Tech 3. Before you're even Tech 2, he could be Tech 3 because Combat Spoils is that strong. You don't usually see people going Combat Spoils level 2 unless you can get that advantage and your opponent's just letting you basically rinse them out of money. Because like it's a 30% spoils boost on level 1 and a 60% on level 2. So it doubles. So you get even richer throughout the game. If that's not good enough for him to be able to do that, obviously, maybe you can counterplay around that and stop him getting to your base. It's very difficult to do because mini bases also give him money. So it's very difficult to have units defending your main base while also defending your mini bases across the map and getting power nodes and things like this. Everything that falls into a map control and things like that. It's very, very hard to deal with. He then has a drop on his second point. So the only two leaders that have a unit drop on second point is Kinsano and Voridus. So he's got the Grenadier drop. So it drops down this big fat gobbly goopy person, drops an infusion pool of goo around, which also does damage to units that walk through it. And it's very oppressive combined with the rush. So when he's rushing you with jump at brutes, grunt mines, things like that. And he also has access to choppers, so if he doesn't want to play the infantry play, he can play the standard chopper play and also bully nearly every UNSC in the game by doing the chopper play with the Gren drop. And when this Gren drop explodes, obviously he does not have suicide grunts, but the Grenadiers work a lot better than like Yap Yap's methane does, because you can run them out an army, an infantry ball, and if they kill it, it explodes like a suicide grunt and drops goo. So it's not only exploding and doing damage, it's dropping goo that damages you and you have to walk through to get any sort of map control. So again, very good zone control with the goo on the floor. We move on to Infusion Wake. So Infusion Wake's like a vortex that doesn't stun, it just drops goo down, trails of goo, which damages the enemy and slows them as well. But that's what his kit's all based around, spreading goo and using your leader powers for the goo. So his hero unit is a melee hero. Melee heroes aren't really great in this game because of the assassination, but you can auto-cancel with the Voridus, which actually makes him pretty strong. Auto-canceling, taking down heroes and pads and stuff and getting money off them. His Y ability, he spreads goo across the map. So normally Tech 2, you've got this strong hero because he's not great Tech 1. Tanky hero who can run across spreading goo, and then you can use the Invigorating Frenzy. So the Invigorating Frenzy is his healing ability. So what this does, it repairs all units and structures that are in the infusion pools. So you can also use this for defense and spread it a lot. So if you have Infusion Wake, Grenadier drop, engineers throw goo, a scarab shoots goo, your leader spreads goo, you can spread goo on defense, spread goo on offense, drop the Invigorating Frenzy ability, which is going to heal your buildings and your army. But not only does it do that, this isn't your standard heal. It provides a 25% speed buff and a 15% damage buff while also healing your army, and level 1 lasts 21 seconds. That is insane. Invigorating Frenzy on third point is such a good leader power, and using the leader to obviously spread the goo, because you don't really have many goo options earlier in the game on third point. You're just going to obliterate your enemy in a head-to-head fight. Not only are you winning the head-to-head fights, if you can get on their base and get some pads with a split push, all you need is 2 jump pad routes separated from your main army on a generator, and you're earning so much money that you're just spamming units, and it's so overwhelming for your opponent to deal with that you're just going to keep snowballing and snowballing ahead in the game. And that's before we even hit his final leader points. So his other leader points, his late game leader powers, you've got Infusion Tech. So Infusion Tech is definitely something you go into late game. It increases the damage of infusion pools and makes Grenadiers and Engineers cheaper. Okay, so Grenadiers and Engineers, like, who cares? His Engineers aren't as good as normal Engineers. Sure, they shoot goo and allow them to spread goo, but they're very weak because they don't have that Engie bubble. If he had normal Engineers with the Engineer bubble and the 40% damage reduction, he'd be insane. Like, just pick Voridus all day and just win every game. It would be pretty crazy. And then level 2, it makes them even cheaper, and it also gives Blisterbacks and Wraiths now shoot goo. So you now have 2 tech-free units, the Blisterback Siege and the Wraiths, which are now shooting goo, so every shot they do spreads goo. And this is going to set you up for his ultimate ability, the Cataclysm. The Cataclysm is an extremely strong ability. It inputs a high amount of damage, so much damage, and there is glitches where you can do the whole map. So you can do the whole map in a Cataclysm, spread goo everywhere with the Grenadiers. So you spam Grenadiers, you've got your engines shooting, you're spreading goo with your leader powers. You pop a Cataclysm, and not only does it damage buildings, but it also damages units as well, and air units. So it's just an all-around crazy good power. On top of that, he also has a drop ability, so he can drop in Engineer and a Marauder. Yeah, Marauder's pretty good. And he's level 2 as well. Drops in an Engineer, a Marauder, a Wraith, and a Blisterback. Now that is a great level 2 drop. A Wraith and a Blisterback come in. All round, Voridus, just very strong. And even his Scarab spreads goo and has the normal Y ability to be able to protect himself with the shield. The only thing that's lacking for him is the Engineers and the Engie bubble, but everything else, he's so good, very strong. So we're going to safely put him as the top leader in our tier list here. Alright guys, so we finally made it. We are down to our last leader to put on the tier list, and that is going to be this man right here, the Johnson. So let's talk about Johnson's leader powers. So he has Digging In or Restoration Drones as his first leader point. Usually you want to go Digging In. So what it does is, it's a very defensive leader power, but it does combine with the bunker. So it gives his turrets a siphon ability and reduces the cooldown of the siege turret drop, and the cost as well, and reduces the cooldown and the cost of the bunker drop. So bunker drop is usually a staple for Johnson as his second point. So as we move into the second point, you have Pelican Transport or Bunker Drop. Pelican Transport is normally overlooked. You would use the Bunker Drop. Generally, playing early with Johnson, you would be playing infantry, snipers, leader, and the bunker just allows you to keep that leader alive and allow him to vet up as well. So vet leader is very good in this game. And the Johnson hero as a whole, he's not the worst leader. He's definitely not the best leader. He has a Y ability that allows you to drop down a heal to be able to heal your base, heal your units and stuff like that, which can be very good utility-wise. We move on to the Mac Blast. So his Mac Blast is a lot better than Isabel. His Mac Blast provides a stun to vehicles and air, which can be very good, especially in team games when you're comboing it with your teammates' leader points and stuff like that. You manage to stun the army for quite some time and also do damage to them. So that can be very good. Remote sensors, probably never use it. Increases map vision from all buildings, so it acts as like a global watchtower essentially. Siege turret drop, mentioned earlier, gets cheaper with Digging 1. Also, it's very underwhelming, the siege turret drop. You take any of the leader power over it. So Johnson's next ability, Mech Overcharge. So this is the play around his mech. So Johnson is known for the Mantises, his mechs, and what this does, it gives all mechs invulnerability and a speed buff as well. So this is a really good Johnson ability if you are playing mechs. It allows you to get away from leader powers and get away. And it's same for Colossus as well. So your Mantis and your Colossus, it allows you to dodge leader powers and get away. Also has access to combat salvage, so can be viable with his Colossus, which are expensive, and Vultures as well if you're playing that way. And his final leader power, Digging in Deep, makes everything you build on a base free. Now, I mean, that is a good ability, but it does come late in the game, 5th point. At that point, you're probably looking at getting your 3rd base, so everything on that base is going to be free. But if you find yourself behind in the game, it's pretty pointless at that point, because you against a good player, you're not normally going to get back into the game. So that ability is not going to allow you to get back into the game. If it's close, it will. It's a toss-up, really. Overall, Johnson probably not seen as a great leader to pick. He does have his place. So the Mantises are good, don't get me wrong. They're very good, but they did receive a speed nerf, which made them even worse. And I think they got a damage buff. So the damage is good, the speed isn't so good, but combo that with a Pelican Transport, you can do a few sneak attacks on them. And remember, this is essentially a 1v1 tier list. Johnson much more higher up in the teams arena, because your teammates can protect you while you're spamming Mantises and flying around all of the map, so they can be good in that setting. But in ones, going pure Mantises, you're just going to get countered all day. It's very easy to deal with, and the only other option he has is generally his standard infantry play. Hogs are much more mobile and better in this meta for harassing, taking down many bases and pads and stuff, and keeping your opponent on the back foot. But Mantises just feel too easy to counter, and with his hero not being one of the top heroes in the game, it doesn't really put him in a good spot against all of the other leaders, and that's who we're comparing it against. It's very tough to see Johnson beating many of these leaders. Don't get me wrong, I've seen it a couple of times, but again, that's down to mistakes caused by the opponent. I'd love to put him in D tier, but he's not that awful, okay? So we're going to drop him. He is the worst leader probably out of all of these, so we're going to drop him just behind Serina down here. Does have his utility. And when we talk about S, B, C, D tier, you're probably looking at S tier like 70% win percentage plus, A tier like 60%. Your B tier is like your 50-50, and then your C tier is like you lose most of the games, 30 to 40%. D tier, you lose almost every game because you're just that bad against these ones. So that's how we're looking at it now. So this is going to be the final tier list. And there you have it. If you have any comments, make sure to drop it in the description and give the video a like. Well, 16 leaders, that was a lot of talking. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed the tier list. Please do leave your comments down in the description, because I'm interested to know if I missed any strengths or weaknesses of any of the leaders. Also post your own tier list in the comment section, what you think, because I would love to see those as well. But make sure you hit like, and if you don't subscribe yet, subscribe, and let me know what you'd like to see on the next video. As mentioned earlier in the video, I've been playing Halo Wars 2 for 5 years now since release. I've been running probably 80% of the tournaments on Halo Wars 2, seen a lot of high level games. I play at a high level myself. I stream on Twitch. Join the Discord if you want extra help and advice. But I do appreciate it. Thank you all very much.